This is the second in a four-part series of forums that are sponsored by the Cornerstone Counseling Center of Chicago. And you'll want to be sure to get some materials about the center on the back table if you don't know much about it. And this center was actually sponsored and founded by LaSalle Street Church way back in 1970, before it was fashionable for churches to sponsor counseling centers. Many pastors used to view counseling as something that wasn't really harmonious with the Christian life, that if you needed counseling, you should read the Bible or talk to your pastor, but not talk to a Christian counselor. So times have changed quite a bit, and the counseling centers had several different names. My favorite one was the Center for Life Skills. And Jonathan Hancock used to say it was a Center for Life Thrills. And I kind of like that name, but maybe Susie can say why they changed it. Anyway, we're very happy to have Susie Francis, the director, and Juliana Cruz. And Randall was going to give them a rousing introduction, but he got stuck over at church because Laura had to go to Florida. So I'll have to let them introduce themselves.
Thank you so much. That was a great introduction. I see so many familiar faces, so it's great to know most of you and have interacted with many of you for the 10 years I've been at the center. So thank you for having us and continuing to involve the center in your adult workshops. I actually remember one of the parts of my interviews was to do an adult forum for LaSalle, and honestly, I remember the funds being there, and I also remember the Amelia Hoogland family being there because I knew their background, and I was supposed to talk on depression, pills, or prayer, and I was just sweating. I'm glad it was not a stress management workshop because I'm like, oh my goodness, I really do want this job as the director, but I'm talking to all of this room has at least 8 physicians, and they're going to ask me all these questions, and it went really well. So 10 years later, we are still involved in doing various types of workshops, and just always encouraged by just the humility that there's so much wealth in the room and so much knowledge of these skills and talents already, and that you still continue to each put yourselves in positions of learning. And I always say the best way to learn is to teach. So between living in the South Loop with the Shamrock Shuffle and preparing for that, I was like, no, if this is a stress management workshop, all things need to be prepared. We can't always get rid of the stressors in life, but we can manage the stressors in life. So that's going to be a lot of what we talk about. Briefly, I've been the director now for 10 years, Wheaton undergrad. Chicago School is where I got my doctorate degree, and then North Park University, my MBA. And right now a couple of us are doing a behavioral health certificate with Farley Dickinson to do more of the model of being present with physicians, and one more time in the tradition of the center being on that cutting edge of what does therapy look like, because a lot of therapy now is in conjunction with physicians. So that's kind of where we are. As far as I name, I get no credit. With a marketing background, I actually think our change was a marketing nightmare, if I'm honest. A lot of people come and say they're here for Cornerstone, and then they're given 6 different types of Cornerstone, and which one are they quite looking for? But it was actually, from my understanding, the branding of when the building was built, all ministries were encouraged to change their names. Cabrini Green Legal Aid got away with not, because they were not in the building, but that was a part of the name change, as well as wanting the word counseling back in the name. So that's what I've heard, but that was also what I inherited. So thank you, and I'm going to let Juliana introduce herself.
Hi everybody. Unlike Susie, you're probably not as familiar with me, but my name is Juliana Cruz. I'm a full-time therapist at Cornerstone. I'm from Los Angeles, California, so I did my undergrad at Azusa Pacific University, which is a sizable private college out in Los Angeles. And then I did my graduate studies at Roosevelt University downtown Chicago. So I've been at Cornerstone for about 3 years. The population I work with primarily is adults with anxiety and depression, so I know a little bit about stress, plus been through grad school, as some of you may have. And the reason why I like working with that population is because I really like seeing people being able to learn how to manage themselves, particularly in such really negative circumstances. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to present to you guys, and hopefully you can leave here with a little bit of knowledge that you didn't come in with.
All right, well, before we start and evaluate our stress, I do want to just open us up in prayer, praying especially for Pastor Laura as she's experiencing a stressful situation, having to fly to Florida to be with her mom, and just to invite the Lord to be a part of our time together. Lord, we just thank you for this day and for the gorgeous sunshine. We thank you for the hope of spring, and we do pray that warm weather comes quickly. Lord, we also pray for Pastor Laura that you will give her a peace that passes understanding as she travels, Lord, and that you will be with her and her entire family and with her mom. I pray that you will just bless us together in this workshop, that we will learn from each other, that we will be able to find tools or be reminded of tools of ways to manage our stress so that we can glorify you even in more difficult or stressful situations. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So the first thing is just to do a quick evaluation and write down how stressed you would perceive yourself to be right now on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being minimal, 10 being extremely. I should have walked you through your folder, so I apologize. Just jumping in, we have several different things in your folder. So one is a copy of the PowerPoint. How many of you need pens? Does anyone need a pen? We'll get you a pen, but right in that square you can just put on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being barely any stress, 10 being you really have a whole lot of things on your mind, the types of symptoms you have when you're stressed are all present with you. Just kind of put between 1 and 10 for yourself how stressed you feel currently.
Thank you.
Here on a copy of the PowerPoints. You can really write it anywhere for you to keep, but it also introduces you to, you have a copy of today's lecture. So sorry I was not clear on that. All right, so to introduce the rest of the folder to everyone, you're going to be working with the sheet of the human anatomy in just a little bit. But you also have a pamphlet of the center and what we do, so feel free to pass that on to someone else. We also have a 30-minute free consultation. That's something that actually a pastor who's on our board helped us with. He really was passionate about how do you make counseling more accessible and more relevant as we're working to more and more create pathways of overcoming all obstacles. He challenged us on what was one more way, and so one more way was actually putting our own, as I call it, skin in the game of like, okay, one more way to overcome a barrier is instead of people only coming to counseling if they've got to pick a therapist and feel like they've really decided, they can come and casually fill out some forms, have 20 minutes of discussing an issue with someone and 10 minutes of problem solving, whatever that is. So feel free to use it for yourself or to pass it on to someone else. We often find that people are talking to us about a life situation or a stressor, and then we're like, oh, well, here's a 30-minute free consult a friend of mine was just telling me about last night. Her coworker was really grieving a breakup, and she's like, well, you can just go in and ask them what are some ways that you could make sure you're doing this well. And so that was a way she used the 30-minute free consult. We always want to improve, so what we call the little bubble sheet, the little mini circles, we'd like you to fill that out just to let us know your opinion of what we did well and what to improve. Our lecture today does not have lots of Bible verses in it, but we wanted to leave you with two things to keep and to use continuously. The first is Bible verses for faith in times of stress. I use this when there are times where all the psychology in the world and all my Wheaton and every other type of my Christianity and education in the world does not help me be centered, and I can't, it's where sometimes even as we're in the season of Lent and we know that the Lord talked about sometimes we have the groanings that can't be uttered, and in the Garden of Gethsemane, he definitely showed extreme stress that we're not thinking logically. So sometimes I use pages like this that already have verses for stress just to pray out loud because I'm not really necessarily doing a good job myself. So that's a way that I have found this helpful, or we sometimes pass this out to clients. But just keep this near your Bible or somewhere. I keep one of them near my nightstand because often it's when I'm waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning with issues that I can't quite deal with. I do a to-do list and then I'm still up. Then I'll pray these and often am able to go back to sleep because I realize, okay, there's nothing else I can do and I've handed this back over. And then an exercise, there's 2 exercises. One is for you to be able to practice by yourself, and the other is one we encourage you to use with someone else, so you can look at them. And the third one especially, visualization, is pretty hard to read and close your eyes and visualize all at the same time. So the way we encourage you to do the visualization exercise is you have someone who's got their eyes closed and you're reading it out to them and they're following along, or vice versa, you have it read. Now if you feel like there's no one I want in my presence when I'm doing this, most of our phones have recording apps at this point, but you can record yourself doing this and then play it back for yourself, just to be able to do a stress management exercise on your own. All right? So everybody feel equipped with what's in the folder? Sorry I didn't do that right at the beginning. So now that we've engaged with the number of stress, Juliana's going to walk us through how do we identify that stress.
So as you may be aware, stress is experienced in different parts of the body. I think if I gave you all a handout that had this slide and the next slide on it, I'd like you to think about where it is that you experience stress the most. And to put this into context, I experience stress in my stomach. So I've had stomach issues since I was a kid, and growing up, I used to go to the doctor all the time, and the only thing the doctor could say is, you're a little stressed out. And when you're a teenager, I mean, that's like saying, it felt like I was making it up, like it was psychological and there was something wrong with me. So I didn't really understand where the stress was coming from and how I could help myself get through it so I couldn't be in pain anymore. I remember waking up in the middle of the night with really severe stomach aches, and sometimes that still happens, I would say 4 or 5 times a year. So that's where I experience stress. So what I had to do then is to get to the origin of my stress, really build self-awareness, which is identifying where the stress came from, how it's affecting me, some of the thoughts that I may be thinking, or some of the feelings that I haven't addressed that are associated with whatever it is that's stressing me out. And we'll go more into that later. But after doing that, my condition dramatically improved. So I know for my mom, she carries her stress in her shoulders, so she's constantly walking around like this. And she'll say she'll be at her desk typing, and she'll be like this. And she'll have to remind herself to put her shoulders back down. Some people grind their teeth at night because of stress. So what I wanted to do is just give you a diagram and just kind of show you where people commonly experience stress. Sometimes people can experience stress in their heads. That can come in the form of migraines, dizziness, things like that. A lot of times, stiffness here in the neck. I don't know if you guys have ever had neck pain. Shoulder pain, pain between the shoulder blades, lower back pain, and it goes all the way down to even knees and then foot numbness or burning. That can all be signs of stress, which is really interesting. So what I wanted to do is just kind of have you guys identify where you experience stress in your body and give you some little tips that I looked up depending on what area of your body you experience stress, some little things that you can do. And again, this is on your handout. First one is the head. If you do experience migraines, like I know some people do, there's a lot of things you can do to kind of calm that part of your body down. One of the things that's recommended is calming sounds while sleeping. So sometimes this is in the form of like a sound machine or something like that, and that can really help you sleep a little bit better, which can help you not have as many headaches or migraines. Also, temple stimulation is what I found. Just kind of doing this, and not only doing it when you have a migraine, but throughout the day when you're experiencing a stressful situation, just to stimulate these temples right here can sometimes help with that. A bite guard when sleeping, I mentioned that earlier, but that can really help with migraines. Another friend of mine experienced stress in her head, so she would get chronic migraines, and they were so bad that she would have to go to the doctor to get shots. And so one of the things that the doctor told her was to go ahead and use a bite guard while she sleeps, because she was grinding her teeth so much at night that it was causing tension in the back of her head, and that would develop into a migraine the next day. So when she started doing that, her migraines dramatically decreased from definitely 2 or 3 times a month down to about 2 or 3 times a year. And then also shoulder placement, just being aware of how your shoulders and being up here can really affect your spine and affect your head. And then as far as limbs goes, regular massages on your limbs. That just kind of means like whether or not you go get massages, I think it's a wonderful thing to do. Sometimes people have a hard time fitting that into their expenses, but whether it's at a chiropractor or a regular massage parlor, I think that it's definitely beneficial. I usually don't realize the powerful effects of massages until right after I get one, and then I'm like, oh wow, I needed that. Or maybe in the middle of one. So I would definitely recommend that. It also recommends manicures and pedicures simply just because of the stimulation in the hands and feet if you do experience stress with that numbness. Another one is regular stretching and exercise. And when I say stretching, I not only mean stretching before you exercise, but stretching in kind of poses, similar to maybe what yoga would be. Of course, some people are sensitive to that, so if it's not that, then maybe any kind of pose that you can do that can really stimulate blood flow, that can kind of calm your heart rate down, and you can practice your breathing as you're doing those things. That can really help if you tend to experience stress in your limbs. A lot of times people will experience stress in their heart, so deep breathing exercise can help with that simply because deep breathing, once again, kind of calms your blood flow, it decreases the speed of your blood flow, and it gives you time to kind of get your thoughts in order. Also, regular checkups for heart, just because people who do experience severe stress with their heart often are susceptible to heart attacks. So making sure that you're getting checked up for that. And what I read also was low caffeine intake can have an impact on people who experience stress with their heart. So making sure that they're not inducing that natural adrenaline that they have, that's not making the stress worse. And then with stomach, like for me, one of the things that I had to really focus on was my diet, because there were certain foods that I was eating that were definitely not helping how I experienced stress in my stomach. So I kind of started to get away from more of the processed flour, processed sugar, processed meats, and really focused on blueberries, almonds, spinach, rice, and tuna, which according to WebMD are definitely good foods to try if you do experience stress in your stomach. And I can say it really it made an impact for me. Also, sleep hygiene is big. Because I did have regular stomach aches, it was difficult for me to sleep. And sometimes I would want to sleep on my couch or I would stay awake watching TV because I had a little bit of a stomach ache. And all of those things developed into patterns where I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. And because my body was exhausted, I was then more stressed out, and it was affecting me more. So there's a certain thing called sleep hygiene, which is a way that you can retrain yourself on how to sleep when and where you're supposed to sleep. So an example of sleep hygiene is I had a client come in once who was having some really bad sleeping problems. And she would drink, like a big gulp of soda every single day. She would watch TV right before she went to bed, and she would watch TV in bed. And she was having a hard time sleeping. So what we did is we had her only sleep in bed, and if she was going to do any other activity, she had to do it out in the living room. So the minute she got tired, then she could go to bed. We also removed her television from her bedroom as well. And what we slowly did over time is we almost retrained her brain to actually get sleepy when she did lay in her bed, because it was almost like a stimulus where she would see her bed and get tired because that's where she was going to sleep over time. And as simple as that sounds, it really did make a big impact for her. And then core exercises also help a lot, whether that's with Pilates or any kind of program that really can help you strengthen your core. That can definitely help with stress in the stomach too. So wherever you guys experience stress, I just wanted to give you a little bit of tips, and we'll go over some of these concepts a little more in the presentation. But that's all. Good luck.
So right now we're going to pause and just actually follow through on a stress exercise, now, because hopefully now that you've had a lot of talking about where in the body you may experience it, if everyone can just sit with their feet flat on the floor. We want everyone to interactively learn. We often are a heady group of people and we get things in theory, but then we don't actually practice them out. So we're going to do mind. Juliana just filled our minds with a lot of information. Now we're going to go into action. And then your eyes can be closed or focused on your knees or the floor. They definitely should not meet mine. So you have the choice to close your eyes, to put to focus them on your knees or the floor, but just having them in a more downward position, your eyes will cause you to be more introspective versus looking at me, as that will cause you to continue to stay in your head instead of be more in your body. And then I want you to just take several deep breaths. That's right. Take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it for a second, and then breathe out. Just do that again. Breathing in through the nose, kind of count to 4, hold it for 2, and then breathe out through your mouth. Try that again. Breathing in through your nose, counting to about 4, holding it for 2, and breathing out. Now I want you to just kind of notice where in your body you feel any more stress, tension, or pain. Just kind of notice in your body and give yourself permission to relax that area. So you might kind of juggle your neck or your shoulder or readjust your position to relax your back or your stomach, but just kind of notice. And now I want you to just one more time breathe in through your nose, holding it and breathing out. Now that we're a little more relaxed, I'm going to ask that each of you open your eyes and take a stress brain. Does everyone have one?
I don't have one.
There you go.
Thank you.
Anyone missing one or need one? Okay. And I want you to take those same breaths. You can continue to choose to close your eyes or look up, whatever you'd like, and just find one of your hands, whichever is more comfortable to start with. And this time, as you breathe in, I want you to squeeze the brain as tightly as you possibly can. So let's breathe in, squeezing, 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 hold it, and squeeze one more time, and then release. And as you breathe out, I want you to slowly let your breath allow your body to relax all the way out to your hand and to the brain. Breathe in one more time, squeezing the brain as you breathe in. Squeeze it one more time harder as you hold that breath, and then as you release the breath, I want you to tell yourself you're becoming more and more relaxed, and you will know this as you will watch that your hand only gradually releases the brain. If it's just immediately releasing, we're still not fully connected. Let's try one more time, breathing in through the nose, squeezing the brain as tightly as you can, and then give it one more squeeze as you hold that breath. And then as you relax, let yourself know you are letting go of all stress, all tension, and all pain, releasing it all the way through, out through those hands. And now switch hands, and we'll do it 3 more times on the other side. Switching your hand. Breathe in through your nose. That's it. Squeeze. Squeeze one more time as you hold it, and breathe out. That's it. Releasing all stress, tension, and pain. And some of you are continuing to readjust your body, which is good. As you try to release that stress, tension, or pain, and you notice it somewhere else, just try to readjust. One more time, breathing in, squeezing it as tightly as you possibly can, holding your breath. Squeeze that one more time, and then release. Telling yourself that with each breath in and out, you are releasing all stress, tension, and pain. One last one, breathing in through the nose, deep breath as though your stomach were a balloon and your nose was the beginning of the tube of the balloon, with your esophagus being the longer side, and you've got to get it in there. Hold it, squeeze one more time, and then release, even including your stomach. Letting go of all stress, tension, and pain. And now I want you to just think through where in your body you feel it. Take 1 more or 2 more cleansing breaths is what we would call them, breathing in and then releasing. And as you're comfortable, to open your eyes back up again. Ask yourself this time on a scale of 1 to 10 how stressed you are, and feel free to write the number down. For some, it will go down, and to be honest, for others it will go up. And you might say, why? Because for some of us, we spend a lot of time being noisy, and the moment we're still, a lot of stressful thoughts come to mind. So just want to let you know that if that happens, be aware of that, and that may be why you avoid stress relieving activities, because it creates quiet for you to think, and when you're thinking, those things come up. And notice that, and try to just keep a little, I wouldn't even say a journal, I keep little like 1 words to say what are those things that just keep pressing, so that I can go back and say, well, what can I do about these? Again, can I pray and release this? Can I actually do something? Like sometimes that creates the first 3 things that I must do by noon the next day or before the end of the day. These 3 things I must do something with them, whether it's an email that when I do this exercise it's like, bing, you still owe so-and-so an email from the last 2 weeks or whatever. Like what can be done about that? Any thoughts, questions, or reactions to the exercises so far? Just noticing in your body and trying to release some stress? Thoughts, questions, comments?
Well, sometimes I have physical problems that cause me stress. And so it's the kind of the question of which comes first, because they're both related. And I don't know how often that happens, or whether you think that one is more likely the cause of the other. But it seems like what happens is like I have my knees hurt, and then I get stressed out because if my knees hurt, it means I can't run, and if I can't run, I can't exercise. And so it's sort of like you could easily get into kind of a circle where you might not know what was the start of the problem, but you sort of know what the course of the problem is.
So true. And you know, especially and even in our medical world, our neurology world, cause and effect is not a true all-the-way science as far as we know now for certain one has this cause and this effect or which way. You know, if I have a stomach ache for 3 days, which I did last week, and I started off with, I had done an all-nighter because we had a lot of things. We just finished our benefit and we had a lot of things, and I have a part-time job as a professor. So all of a sudden just all things lined up and I was like, wow, this feels like college again. I am doing from 8 o'clock in the morning all the way through 10 o'clock the other days night, you know, and I was like, then I had some stomach issues. So the behavior, the body was like, oh, maybe that's just stress. Then it was the next day, I was even more sick. I was like, well, maybe it was still the stress. And then my eyes started hurting as I moved and I realized, oh, maybe I actually caught a little of the flu, probably because I hadn't slept and my immune system was down. But yes, and I was a little more stressed. I hadn't been aware that even doing the all-nighter, quite frankly, I was relieved because I'm like, I'm going to get these monkeys off my back and then I'll be able to sleep really well because I will have just pushed through and gotten all this done. So I did not perceive this to be stressful. When I had the stomach ache, I was like, maybe I am more stressed, or maybe I'm sick, or what's wrong with me? So you're right, that the two can be cyclical. What's most important is we pay attention to it. Like for me, I had to realize, okay, I need to change my diet for now, go on the BRAT diet, because whatever is causing this, I need not to eat regular food because that's not going to help no matter what the cause is. I need to find the rest of the week how to take care of myself. And I worked mostly from home, so I still had lots of work to do, but even just eliminating the commute. So some of it, like you said, if the knees are hurting and you can't run, what might be something you can do that is physically exerting but is not harming your knees? Does that make sense for everyone? So starting to say, okay, what is something I can do? And I started paying more attention to, because like Juliana, grew up in with a lot of holding my stress in my stomach, but over the years of practicing what we preach, I have not had that problem. So I was like, have I been so unaware that it's gone back to this? You know, so it was kind of, but I then was more paying attention to my stomach, checked my blood pressure, just trying to see, was I having stress build up that I was not wanting myself to kind of own and be aware of. So it is actually find that, don't get hung up on is it chicken or egg, and then start to find ways to relieve. Are there things, I know when I've had knee problems, they say sit in a chair, which is harder to find these days, but like a counter or somewhere where you can swing your knees back and forth. Has anyone ever heard that? You know, for me in high school running track, that was what my doctor recommended, and it worked because it was a way to just have the knees, now we have elliptical machines and those sorts of things that we didn't then, to have a low impact just way of relieving my knees of the impact of the running. So just really finding what is happening in our bodies. Is that stress or is the body issue creating stress? And then more importantly, how can I relieve some of that? Other questions, thoughts, comments? All right, well, we're going to keep going. So we're going to go on with what exactly is stress, and we'll be brief because we've done a lot of knowing what it is, but we're going to just go through a more dynamic example of that.
Okay, so just like Susie said, we'll be a little bit brief because most of us really know what stress is. But stress is actually used to describe the body and mind's reaction to everyday tensions and pressures. So stress can be psychological or stress can be also physical. And kind of like what you said, where you can experience stress in different ways. And some of us don't even know we're stressed out until we actually feel that physical symptom of stress. Too much stress can make a person more prone to illness or mental problems. I found this really interesting when I was studying this stuff in grad school. We actually looked at studies of people who were really stressed out and how much, when they were experiencing something physical, how much more difficult it made them to heal from that. So whether that's someone in a hospital bed and they're very ill, or someone who may, like Susie, have a stomach bug, it's difficult when we do get caught up in what is in those physical symptoms to calm down. And so it's important really to really identify kind of the causes of where the stress can be coming from. I know for me, I have to do a lot of reflection, look at the different areas of my life, and kind of piece together what is it that I may be avoiding or not working on that could be causing to this physical symptom, and not get tied up in just the feeling of the unpleasant feelings of that physical symptom. Stress is a reality of the modern life that has been linked to many disorders, usually attacking the bronchial digestive area, which I've talked about having a lot of experience with. And there is a lack of self-awareness. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but self-awareness is really knowing yourself and asking yourself certain questions that are going to help you get to the bottom of your stress. So some of those questions might be, what is it that is stressing you out? And what are the effective tools to relax that you can use to relax? The effective tools that you could use to relax. So I think a lot of times we hear this information, but we really don't put it to use. And I would really advocate that we put this stuff to use, because I can speak from personal experience and from the stories of my clients. When we really stop and take a minute and focus on our breathing and picture our lungs as a balloon blowing in and out, that can really have a powerful impact. I heard something interesting at a conference a while back that talked about the way that your brain stores information during times of stress. And one of the reasons why we will keep talking about breathing exercises when it comes to stress is because in times of stress, the brain actually, the part of the brain that kind of inhibits processing or problem solving is actually stunted. So what breathing does, it will actually open that part of the brain back up and have it functioning more regularly. And that's one of the reasons why I tell a lot of my clients to focus on their breathing, either when they're really angry or really upset, because it actually helps them think more effectively and kind of process through whatever situation that they're in. And they've reported each and every time that that has been the case. And then this is just an example of stress. You have a presentation to a client or your boss Monday morning. You have a blast on the weekend with little sleep and wake up late, dive into the shower, scramble on your clothes, etc. I've never done this.
Tell us more.
Oh, wow.
Her boss is right here.
But every now and then, you'll find yourself where you are in a stressful situation, and a lot of times I know for me, if it's something, let's say it's a situation like this, and I've kind of brought it upon myself, the thoughts I'll tell myself is, oh, see, you shouldn't have gone to that event last night. You knew you weren't going to go. You're so irresponsible. I can't believe you did this. So what I'm doing is I'm shaming myself, and that's making my stress even worse. So we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about the importance of thoughts and how actually using your thoughts in a more positive way can have a positive impact on how you handle your stress in those stressful moments. So we're going to go into these a little bit more in depth, but stress symptoms. There's physical stress, so like allergies, asthma, stomach problems, heart problems, hypertension, headaches, acne, panic attacks, hyperventilation, and sexual functioning. The most surprising one to me on there is acne. And you don't usually think of stress as being able to affect your acne, but in fact it does, because stress can affect your hormone levels, and your hormone levels can sometimes affect your acne, which is interesting to me. There's also emotional signs of stress, so the inability to focus on a task, forgetfulness, depression, anxiety, insomnia, uncontrollable anger, persistent feelings of guilt, rumination or of rehashing incidents in your mind, or intrusive thoughts. So a lot of times what I'm doing when I'm working with adults with anxiety or stress disorders is really working on that emotional piece. giving them kind of the self-efficacy or the self-confidence to work through whatever it is, that those emotional sides. A lot of times people will push away the negative emotion when they start to feel that coming up on the surface, and they'll try to avoid it. And what you're doing there is you're not coping with it. So a lot of times what I try to change with my clients is when they start to feel something that is emotionally, that they're emotionally reacting to actually figure out what that thing is and spend some time focusing on that rather than pushing it aside because it doesn't feel good. There's the social symptom of stress, which is difficulty sustaining conversations, lack of interest in social interaction. And we see this a lot, especially with adults with depression, who will sometimes isolate themselves because they are going through whatever it is that they're going through. So stress, you can sometimes see stress in someone else or recognize stress in yourself if you feel that you're not engaging like you used to with people. There's also the spiritual. Feeling disconnected and unable to gain fulfillment, disillusioned with God. And this is something that I encounter a lot with people who don't feel as connected as they used to, and so a lot of those shaming thoughts come in, and that just exacerbates their stress. So oftentimes, especially in the secular world, we don't think about stress impacting our spiritual lives, but it absolutely can, and it's actually a really good tool that I think Satan can use to pull us away from God. And again, one of the things that I love about my job is being able to watch people work through stress and becoming more close with God in the process. So.
All right, so we're going to work on when does stress need medical intervention or psychological intervention, and briefly what we've talked about, a lot of what we're giving you is the middle of the road, what I call that whole hump in the bell curve, the average, but then there are times where the disillusionment with God, for example, that can sound extreme, but when we're stressed out and feeling down, and let's have an example that I can say at Cornerstone, if we're feeling like we've got quite a lot of things on our plate, and then someone says, you know what, I have just found another job and I only can be here one more week. We all have had that in our jobs, right? Right when you think, what, really, is that timing really good? And in Christian jobs, it's even better when you hear, and I've prayed about it. Then you're like, wow, that's hard. Some of you have worked in the Christian world, some of you have worked in others, but it's harder. And then you go, okay, Lord, did you think I needed that additional stressor? Or anybody had that? So it's not this like existential crisis, you're wondering if you're going to believe in God, but in the moment you have this like what I call the Jacob wrestling with the Lord of like, really, Lord, did I need this right now? And it's not in that moment that we feel all his love and the Psalm 23, like, how am I supposed to rest in green pastures if you've like taken the pasture out from under me, or whatever that is we're experiencing. So that's what we mean in those, if you go back and review them, that there's sometimes it's in that moment you are experiencing that, even if it's not for longer periods. Now what happens is if anything that Juliana just went through happens for longer periods, you do need to pay attention to that. You do need intervention. If all the praying in the world is not doing anything for you and all the disciplines you've had are not working the way they used to work, that's a moment to say, you know what, it doesn't hurt to go get a little extra help. An example I like to use is in the fitness world. We are body, mind, spirit, and today we're going to go through the body, mind, spirit concepts of stress, and then the 5 sensory ways we can enhance ourselves to manage our stress. But in the physical world, even athletes who are extremely fit have a moment where they are sent to the trainer to strengthen certain muscles, to throw the ball better or bat it better or recover, right? So looking at medical intervention is not seeing it, as Juliana talked about, those self-thoughts of I'm a failure or something's wrong with me if I can't figure this out myself. It's instead saying, okay, I need the expert to help readjust me. So looking at that, it's when we have signs of depression or any of the other things we talked about for longer than 2 weeks, or for you if it's in an extreme where it's debilitating you even in a few days. So this is not something that's prescriptive of like, well, I'm just going to endure because it's not 2 weeks yet. We would rather that you kind of know yourself, that if you're finding that it's debilitating, or if those around you are like, wow, you need some help, don't see that as pejorative as sometimes it sounds to us when people tell us that, but actually find it as a way of getting the sign to say, okay, I'm going to make an appointment, or use that 30-minute consult, or talk to someone. But those are the things to recognize, and especially in our Christian world, We don't often talk about the last one, which is using alcohol or prescription drugs excessively. If the medication you were given by your dentist a year ago for pain, for a root canal you had, is something you're using today because of this headache you have, that's a sign. Or if the glass of wine is not something that is, well, I could take it or leave it, but man, it's 3 o'clock and you're already thinking, I cannot wait till I get home to have that drink. Those are times where it's maybe a sign that we're now depending on something besides our natural cues to manage our stress. So from the body, mind, spirit concepts, one of the things to keep in mind, I had a picture, but I think you guys have it here, right? On your, the spiritual rest, so I just want to make sure that you guys get that. Somehow got skipped in our PowerPoint. So there's a little slide that just has spiritual rest in yellow, and it's, did it come out in your slides? Okay, so only in our original, sorry. But I'll just describe it. There's a concept of spiritual rest which says we can't really get to spiritual rest until we acknowledge our body, our mind, and our spirit. That if we're so uncomfortable that when we're quiet to pray we can't pray, that's a problem. That would be something in our body. Or in our mind, if we're having so much turmoil, we cannot experience spiritual rest, which is something that is a discipline, something we're called to, because our mind is preoccupied. And then ultimately in the soul. Sometimes we have such angst, often around trauma more than just stressors, the extreme sides of stress, where we really do have a time where we're wondering and questioning our relationship with God or His care for us. So that's something to keep in mind. If you would like a copy of that sheet, just please email us, let us know, and I'll make sure that you get a copy. But Juliana's going to walk us through a couple ways of paying attention to ourselves in the body, mind, spirit categories.
Okay. All right, so we've talked about this a little bit already, so I'll be brief. But basically, we want to explain how stress can really affect your body, mind, and your spirit. I've already gone over breathing exercises. I can't stress that enough, no pun intended. Nurturing physical, emotional, social, and spiritual self. Regular exercise can sometimes help. A lot of times, what stress is, there's a really good book called The Anxiety Cure, and what it talks about in that book is it talks about how our adrenaline can sometimes work against us when we tend to have problems, especially severe problems with stress. Simply because our adrenaline can our adrenaline can almost turn into stress sometimes. So I thought, well, exercise is often used to help stress, and I wondered, it seemed like there was some sort of a discrepancy there. How if obviously you use adrenaline when you're exercising, but exercise helps stress, and adrenaline can often hinder stress. So when looking into this further, what I found is when you exercise, you naturally increase endorphins, which a lot of us have already heard. Endorphins can actually calm us down after the exercise is complete. So it's not so much about the adrenaline while we're exercising, but the feelings we get after exercise that can really help us manage stress better. Relaxation and relaxation techniques, similar to the one that we did earlier, really being present with your mind and your body while you're doing those exercises. When we say focus on your breathing, really trying to kind of tune out what's going on around you and focusing on your body, focusing on your lungs as you're breathing in and breathing out. And then self-acceptance is a big thing. I talked a little bit about how shameful thoughts can sometimes induce stress. So self-acceptance is something that I actually find a lot, or that is present a lot when I work with clients with anxiety. An example would be one time I had a client who was experiencing a lot of anxiety. She was a young mother. And she had a pattern throughout her life of setting expectations really high for herself and then meeting them. So she was valedictorian in high school, same with college. When she got her first job, it was a really prominent firm, and she did very well there. And so she was used to setting these really high expectations for herself and meeting them. Well, what happened is she had kids. And when she had kids, she realized that oftentimes, and I don't have kids, but this is what I hear, oftentimes the work that you put into that, you don't always see the results right away. And that was really, really hard for her. And so she was shaming herself a lot because she was realizing she was putting all this work into mothering her children and she wasn't seeing the results from that. And so she started shaming herself and she started questioning herself and being like, well, what's wrong with me? In every other area of my life I've excelled. Why is it that in this area I can't get this right? I'm a failure after all. So she went from, if I can't reach these expectations, I'm a failure. So we did a lot of work on self-acceptance. And after about 12 sessions of really talking through what does it mean to have these high expectations, obviously these expectations have served you in a good way because they've caused you to achieve certain things that you may not have achieved. But now they're also serving you in a negative way in the sense that you're making them so high in this area of your life when you don't have complete control over this area like other things. And after talking that through, she was able to kind of forgive herself during the times where she did feel like all of her hard work wasn't quite paying off. And that was really powerful for her. And then finding a hobby I think is important too. What do you like to do that really relaxes you? This is big for me. I don't necessarily like to do the yoga, but I like to do the stretches involved. And so I like to get up every morning, say my prayers, and then kind of do some stretches. That has really, really helped me. Again, it's helped me strengthen my core, which has helped with my stomach issues. But it also helps my mind, and it really is a way for me to kind of center myself first before I go into my day. And then oftentimes I'll do it at the end of my day as well. And it's a really good habit to get into. So whether your hobby is something simple like that, or if it's something else that you like to enjoy, making sure that you don't take that out of your life. I think sometimes it's really easy, especially when we're busy with family, with friends, with work, to take away some of the things that we like to do because we just feel like we don't have time for it. But one of the best pieces of advice that I got when entering into this field is because we do try to take care of others all the time, it's really important that we take care of ourselves. And it's very important that as much as a priority as work is or a family, that we put ourselves up there too. And that we really allow ourselves to enjoy certain parts of our day. So when I say finding a hobby, that's kind of what I'm talking about. And then once again, make time to focus on connecting with yourself. That's an example I already gave you, but that's also really helpful. Okay, so for the mind, I gave you a little example with my client on how mind can actually affect stress. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, so what that means is I believe that there's two components to why people find themselves in a negative emotional state. One of them is cognitive, so it's the surface thoughts, the automatic thoughts that come up that they tell themselves, and the beliefs that they have about the world and about themselves. And I've seen in my work when I use cognitive behavioral therapy to treat anxiety or stress, I've seen significant results. Simply because a lot of times, again, we'll think thoughts or we'll do things through our behavior that aren't helping our situation at all, and sometimes we're not even aware that we're doing them. So again, building that self-awareness through CBT has really helped people with these types of disorders. So replacing negative thoughts and focusing on positive ones. So what I did with that client, instead of shaming herself after, so that one client who was a mother who wasn't quite seeing the fruit of her labor with her kids, instead of shaming herself in those situations when her kids did act up, she would stop. She would catch that. She would tell herself the negative thought, oh, you're a failure as a mother. And she would catch that thought, I'm a failure as a mother. And instead of owning that, she would challenge that. Am I really a failure as a mother? Have I done everything I can to teach my kids this lesson? If the answer is yes, I'm then going to choose to extend myself grace for that. And on the surface, it seems like a simple concept, right? But it's not something that we do naturally. So one of the ways that she has learned to manage her anxiety is to really change those automatic negative thoughts into more affirming thoughts. And changing that around to, I am a good mother. I put in everything I have, and although sometimes it may not be seen, it doesn't change the effort that I put into this, and that's the important thing. So it's an example of how even just automatic thoughts, changing those can sometimes help us deal with stress. Using your thoughts to be your own best coach, forgiving yourself and others. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Eat, Pray, Love. Yeah, some of you? Okay, I love that movie. It's also a great book. Elizabeth Gilbert wrote that book, and she was the author of Eat, Pray, Love. And she said one of the most, to me, powerful quotes that I love and that I think about all the time. She says, you should be able to select your thoughts the same way you select your clothes every morning. This is a power you can cultivate. If you want to change things in your life so bad, work on the mind. It's the only thing you should be trying to control. And I love that quote because it really, really talks about the power of the mind and how much our thoughts and our perceptions of things can really affect the way that we behave, which can affect our experiences. Memorize scriptures and other sayings that can help support you in times of stress. So like that quote that I have told myself over and over and over again in my life, I can say that it really, really does help me because each time I say it or think about it, I'm reminded of an important concept that has helped me through difficult times. Having an overall positive perspective. A lot of times with cognitive behavioral therapy, what it sounds like is put rose-colored glasses on. Look at these situations as something that is just more positive than negative, and that's not what really this is about. In the case of that client, for example, it was much more about finding what the truth is. And the truth is often so much more peaceful than the negative thoughts that we tell ourselves. I'm a horrible mother because this happened is not true. That's just not true. So getting down to the truth is, and once we look at the truth, that's much more forgiving and is full of much more grace than, again, the negative thoughts that come up. So when I say positive perspective, I'm not saying it in a way that changing your perspective, just making it into positive instead of negative, but really looking at the truth of the thoughts that may be creeping up and really challenging those and advocating for yourself can be a big change when you're dealing with stress. Relaxation and meditation, you could use Bible verses or Christian writings, meditations or yoga, which we've mentioned that, and expressing your thoughts and emotions. A lot of times I'll advocate that my clients keep some sort of a record of their day. And the reason is because oftentimes when we put something down on paper, we remove it from ourselves. So there'll be a lot going on in our mind, which will cause a lot of emotional impact on us. And when we write it down on paper or we draw it, we're separating it from ourselves and looking at it from the outside. That can have a really powerful impact on our psyche. And I find with people it helps them process things even more. So one of the things that I'll do, for example, if a client does have a pattern of telling themselves negative thoughts every day, we call that part of us the inner critic. And so especially with kids, what I've used is, why don't you draw out your inner critic for me? And some kids will draw it in the form of a witch. I had someone draw it in the form of like a blank face with a mask of her face, which was interesting. So we can use art to kind of process some of those negative thoughts that come up, or we can journal about those negative thoughts. But either way, I really recommend keeping some sort of a record of some of the stuff that is stressing you out, because I do think that it can help us process, and I've seen it definitely be worthwhile in the work that I do.
Right, next is spirit. So we've done body, mind, and now spirit. So some of the ways that we can manage our stress in our spiritual side is spend time alone and quiet with yourself and the Lord. And often that is what we aren't doing, and technology helps us do this less and less and less. I mean, when I started teaching this about 15 years ago, it was, try not to have the radio or the TV on. And now it's like, and the cell phone and everything else. I mean, now there's a whole thing called a disorder of texting while sleeping. And people, even in corporate life, are texting clients back, especially in jobs where they are supposed to be on demand, or the perception that their boss expects answers at all times. And they've had them video recorded where they do get up and they do respond and they don't recall responding. So you can imagine that sometimes they successfully respond, and other times what they are saying is not very professional or coherent. So what do you think is the quickest remedy for that? Right, turn the phone off. And then for the people, even that I've seen, that almost gives them a heart attack. I can't, there's all these reasons I cannot turn my phone off. So now what they've done is, even if that's not a solution for you, this phone has to be far enough away that you must actually physically get up to go address the phone, so that you are more conscious of what you are interacting with on the phone and wide awake so that you actually can recall that you texted someone and responded. So even that is something where we are so far away from what it means to be alone, what it means to be quiet. And I know that that's an absolute resource when we read verse after verse in the Bible of needing that time away or alone. And even when we did the breathing exercise, that wasn't even 10 minutes. That was less than 5 minutes. So we're not saying you need all this time. I remind myself of that all the time. Even when busy, 5 extra minutes and 10 extra minutes to make sure I have some meditation time are not that different. It's not going to alter my entire day to put an extra 10 minutes in. What it will do is give me more positive solutions. I will have time where I have been cleared to be able to do some of the thinking that Juliana talked about. For example, for me, one of my spiritual quiet times is I can see Lakeshore Drive. So if there's times where I'm either, again, up all night or I wake up at 5 and I have the automatic thought is like, oh, I'm the only one that is like, I have to work so hard and blah, blah. And then I make myself look outside my window because I can see Lakeshore Drive and I can see 55 and 9094. And what do you think is out there when I look at 5 o'clock in the morning? Right, a lot of people who are already dressed and almost to work because they're like 3 minutes from the city. So that helps me because in that spiritual moment of my own quiet, I'm like, Lord, me, only me, like Elijah did. And then God's like, excuse me, there's how many prophets, right? There's other people. And often we can mitigate stress when we realize no matter what we're experiencing, we're really not alone. And that really reduces a lot of the stress. So being alone in quiet can help give us some of that perspective. And have a vision. That's where for me the reality, the visualization of nope, I'm not alone. Many other people go to work and they're doing things at all different times. And also Christ's vision. No, the Lord does not want me waking up and stressing every day. So I'm aware of that as well. So what does it look like to sit with the calendar and say, yippee, I'm going to get to sleep in on this day, or I'm going to be more quiet on that day. But actually having visualization of what we do desire and some ways of thinking through how do we achieve that. So moving through these, I'm not going to cover them all, but the laughter is huge, and then the prayer of learning that we are created in His image. What does it mean? Sometimes it's literally a prayer of, Lord, I can't see this, so help me see myself the way you see me. Because sometimes all the praying in the world of, Lord, I need to see me differently. Just ask Him to show you His vision of you. And then stopping to acknowledge all the accomplishments. Many of us who handle stress or are aware of stress or are stressed out a lot are really aware of our imperfections. It can be that white sheet syndrome of a perfectly white sheet with a smaller than a pen dot part of coloring to it, and all we notice is that smaller than a pen dot blue ink or black ink or red ink, not the white sheet. So if that is a syndrome for you where you are able to always identify what you haven't done, what didn't get done that day, and not what you did do, how did you occupy your time, that altered thinking will be helpful. And then just staying grounded in the spiritual disciplines, especially of acknowledging our blessings and thankfulness. I am not thankful for how cold this cold has continued. I'm from the Virgin Islands, but I am thankful that in a month I will be at home. I'm already sad as well that in 6 weeks I will be back here. So do you see how we have to balance our thoughts? So if I'm the type of person that's already, but in 6 weeks I'll be stuck back in here, and on Memorial Day last year I was still in a coat and gloves, I will be stressed. Instead, I focus in on, it is gorgeous and sunny, and I actually prefer sun over what temperature it is. I am a sun baby, and therefore I love the sun. Well, I'm aware, and I thank the Lord for every Sunday. I actually know we are better than 3 years ago when we had 3 minutes of sun in February for the whole month. But those are things I choose to remember, so I'm like, ooh, it was nothing compared to that February, and then my perspective changes. Does that help everyone? That it's kind of, we can observe, I observe that. Part of me wants to feel sorry for myself 6 weeks from now. But I can also observe that in a month I'm going to be at home with my mom in, as it was, 86-degree weather with a guaranteed day of sun every day. So I can choose which one I go with. Does that help? That both are my reality, but which one I choose to focus on is what Juliana was really trying to remind us of. And that's also when the Lord talks to us about meditating on Him. It's that choice of which part we choose to focus in on the most. Last part of the body, mind, spirit is time management. And that just goes to how do we discipline our time? Again, I'm not going to emphasize every point because you have it. And so the perfectionist will want us to, and the rest of you, the teacher and me, the professor and me will say, and you have it, so you can go back to it and read it for yourself. But it's really just saying to be more realistic. One of the things they have found is most of us who battle stress or anger, the things that cause our anger to be exacerbated or our stress is time. This morning, knowing about the Shamrock Shuffle, I went ahead and added far more time because I would have not been very Christian between realizing that there was no easy way, and then realizing I was going to get here maybe when you guys were already here. I would have had the physiological symptoms of a lot of sweat under my armpits, a lot of poor me, and I'm just trying to do your work, Lord, and all of these things. But time management is one of those, planning ahead, looking ahead. What are going to be obstacles? What time do I need to get what I need accomplished? How many other tasks have I said yes to? Am I even focused on the priority that is the priority in this moment, or am I over here doing something that just makes me feel better? So just really actually learning how to organize, and if you find yourself still fumbling, ask for support. Often your loved ones and your friends can help remind you when you finally ask them for a little help. How do I typically spend my time? And if it were in your own opinion, what might be some other things? I mean, I have some friends I'd like to say, that Facebook you always want to tell me about, have you ever taken a log and just logged every minute you're on Facebook and accumulated how much time? Because there's a few people I find tell me they have no time, and when I, in my own mind, it is judgmental, but I try to calculate what they do, I can't even figure out how they don't have time, but they do tell me a lot about their online life. So, and even in a client's case, I did, because there we're given more permission than with friends and family to keep a journal of how many minutes they were spending on all the different levels of social media. And they found 4 more hours in their day. Does that mean you cut out all social media? No. But it can mean that you I will not just keep it on. I will have my time for being on Facebook. If you're away, like we say, even with we're moving our office to not having to respond to emails all the time, because that's another one for us. I can spend 7 hours on responding to everyone in our same little office suite when I had 7 other hours of things to do. Therefore, I then have a 14-hour day. What we're now working on is realizing to put in, I will be checking email from here to here. So we're communicating with the others. Please don't expect me to respond if you emailed me at 10:15. But look at when I'm going to be responding, because when we're with clients or meetings, we're not responding. So it's kind of being realistic of, do I really have to constantly engage in certain things that take up my time when they're taking up my time, or can I reorganize that? All right? We're going to, we have just the 5 senses that we'll briefly walk you through. Juliana's going to start with the fun one. So,
Oh,
And I know
some of you all tasted the blueberry.
oh wow.
Blueberry cake.
Oh,
Yeah, it's really good.
good, and it had blueberries in it, which helped.
Yeah.
That's great. I don't know about the cake part, but
Well, I just
So-
gotta get going. No, sorry.
Okay.
I promised my dad I'll get a chance to visit him
okay.
while he's
Thanks
at
for
work.
coming.
No problem. Excuse me.
So we'll go through these a little bit more quickly, just because I want to make sure we leave room for question and answer at the end. So I'll just be brief here. But as far as taste goes, taste is a way that can sometimes work against us in times of stress and work for us. I know for me, growing up, especially having stomach issues, that was something I really had to work on, because I was one of the people that used food to calm me down. So if I had a really stressful day, I would come home and I would have a bowl of ice cream. And in the moment, that tasted great and it was making me happy, which seemed like it was helping me. But did that help my stomach issues in the middle of the night? Absolutely not. So taste can be something that can work for us, but it can also work against us, and it's something we can utilize that we do every day that can help us. We've talked a little bit already about some of the foods that we can eat, but teas can often help. Even just a cup of green tea in the morning with a little bit of honey, rather than coffee, that natural source of caffeine can help much better than a cup of coffee with creamer in it, which has added sugars. A healthy diet of fruits, veggies, and healthy snacks. Really being aware of how much processed foods we're eating. Anything that comes in a package is most likely going to be something that's processed, that's filled with a lot of preservatives, and things that aren't really going to help us feel good when we're done eating it. One thing a nutrition told me one time was, when you're done eating a meal, you should feel energized. If you don't feel energized, it may have not have been the best meal. And I thought that that was really interesting because a lot of times we think about what we're feeling when we're eating the meal, and we don't think about how we feel afterwards. So once I started incorporating more salads into my diet, more whole vegetables or more whole fruits, she was absolutely right. When I was done eating that, especially on a lunch break at work, rather than having French fries and maybe a slice of pizza or something, having a salad and having some fruit, I was much more awake and alert and ready to continue on with my day. One of the things that is in this presentation that I really, really like is focusing on the taste of your food. If you are somewhat of an eater when you're stressed out, again, being mindful of the action of just eating and tasting your food can be really powerful. And it's another way where you can use even just taste to kind of calm you down, especially when you're eating foods that are healthy for you.
Yes, so the next one is feel. So we've done taste, now feel. What are the things that we feel when we're in ways that we can reduce stress? We've already talked about some, the massage. There's also massage schools. So if you want to be really economic, I love going to the massage schools in the city because they have both the professional massage therapists and the students. I haven't had a student mess up yet because they get a grade. So it's like really great $30, $35 massage for an hour versus the $90 and a student who is doing a good job. Oils and lotions, just even paying attention. With a really long winter, we often have dry skin. And there are lots of studies that show irritability on the outside can cause irritability on the inside. So guys, I'll harp on you a little more than the women, but it's not always the masculine thing to do to slather yourself with lotion. But if you're going to be scratchy and itchy all day, you're going to be more likely to also be irritable. So taking a little extra of that lotion and making sure your body is actually hydrated, because our skin is one of the largest organs we have. Fabrics. I'm allergic to wool, and yet they sell in Chicago and the Midwest such great wool things that I've had to learn finally to read, and now they've put the tags in places that aren't easy, but I have to go digging around and finding that tag, because some things will even say it's just less than 2% of Morona, whatever, or something that is not supposed to itch, and all day I'll just be itching and looking a little odd. So I've learned, just do not, no matter how cute it is, it will not last more than 5 minutes on you without becoming uncomfortable and distressed. And I'm then looking at the clock all the rest of the day for how long I have to have that item on. So paying attention to that. Reflexology, we already touched on that our hands and feet, just having little massages there can calm us down. Stretching classes and hugs. Amelia Hooglin family is not here anymore, but as you know, their son did his hugs experiment and has written his book on that. But hand holding, so the physical touch. Even if you're not in a romantic relationship, it's still important to be connected with people in that physical way. So we're going to move on to smell.
So smell is one of my favorites because I don't know about you, but smell really calms me down. I've always been a fan of candles or incense or anything that can really stimulate that part of my senses. So smell is something that I think is underrated, and it's often something that can really help us. Oftentimes, the whole purpose of all of this is we can't really control sometimes a lot of the things that are stressing us out. But we do have control of how we manage that stress. So we have control if we're going to light a candle, or if we're going to light some incense, or what we're going to put into our bodies. And that's kind of what this is about, is really strengthening that sense of smell to help you deal with stress. It's a huge one for me. I can be having a certain type of day when I get to work and be really stressed out, but the minute I light a candle or even just smell an essential oil that I have in my office, it will calm me down. My supervisor at work actually has a box full of essential oils, and a lot of times what she'll do with her high anxiety clients is she'll do a breathing exercise with them in the beginning and then just have them smell an oil. And one of the reasons for that is, as you know, your nasal passages go directly to your brain. So it's one of the quickest and easiest ways for you to calm yourself down. And it definitely works with the clients that I've used it with, and it works for me. So some examples would be oils, candles, diffusers, incense, and potpourri. Types of smells found to help are lavender and sage. And then continuing to make sure and managing your breathing as you're kind of engaging in that sense. I don't know, do any of you ever light candles? Do you guys light candles for, and what does it do for you when you do that?
We're laughing because he calls me the nose because I have lavender, I have oils, I have candles, but he's a chef and he likes the smell of food. And I can't stand all the smells of garlic and onions and everything. So I'll light a candle while he's cooking. So I'm like, smell can be relaxing, but it could also be very agitating. And it
That's right.
just depends on who the person is.
That's
So-
right. I used to work at Disneyland when I was in undergrad, and I remember, you guys know Disneyland. So there's this back way we used to get into work, and it was through the dumpsters is how we entered. It was awful. So I would walk into work, and that's the first smell I would smell, and because of my sensitive stomach, by the time I was at the end of that kind of corridor, I was like, ugh. And that's how I would start my work day. So I actually ended up bringing oils with me and kind of smelling those after that. So yeah, it's funny how smells can have a negative effect, but can also have a positive effect. And it's something that we can use that are really easy to get access to.
All right, so the next one is, and the last one is sound, and we will then have all our senses covered, but also enveloping ourselves with sound. So what do you want your house to smell like when you walk in? What are a few things you can have when you walk in to visualize, to bring yourself some calm are things, but then also what sounds? What are things that can help with that? So there's a lot now that has been done in sound therapy. There's all these wave music. So if, for me, in my part-time job, it's in forensic psychology, so I read papers for my students as I help them get ready to graduate and their competency exams. So they're 40, 50-page papers on cases that are pretty awful, because forensic psychology has to do with clients who are either in prison, coming out of prison, or are in other realms of psychology and the law. But I need multiple stimulation. So for me, I'm like, I need something to listen. Well, watching TV and reading the paper I felt like was relaxing, but then that would take the paper 6 hours to read. I'm like, okay, that's not working for me, even though I've had fun watching TV that I never get to watch. But I've gone back to the sound. I listen to instrumental only music, just like if I were studying, because I'm able to focus in on what my student is telling me in a way that still helps me teach them something in my feedback, but I'm also enjoying something I want to enjoy and not feeling like I have to endure through one more awful client story. So just different types of music for different situations, not always the same, just like the smells. And then last is be intentional, that sometimes it's lying or sit in a comfortable position and on the floor as the music plays. Our car is another way, or your iPod if you take public transportation, or MP3 player. But be intentional of what kinds of sounds if you're gearing yourself for a different situation. If you're leaving work knowing you're going to have to be amped up because of the kids or a spouse or something, even though you had a bad day, you might want to use that in between time to use music or something you're listening to, even if it's not music. Listen to a lecture or something that helps switch your gears so you can be in the frame you need to be in the next situation, versus not paying attention and then arriving and kind of getting annoyed with each other because you just didn't even know what kind of day I came from. Just using sound, including the sound of what other people might have to say. Sorry, we left out sight. I thought we were finished. Sorry about that, guys. Go ahead, Juliana.
Okay, I'll be
right there.
No, it's okay. Sight, what I'll just say with this is, I don't know about you, but I really love those little cheesy calendars that have that have pictures of places that I probably will never go, unfortunately. But whether it's like an ocean in Greece or a meadow somewhere in Ireland, I love that. And because what it does is, it's an escape. And it's so fun picturing myself there. I just got back from Hawaii, yay! And one of the things that I made sure I did in Hawaii is when I was looking at something beautiful, I wanted to remember it, so I took a picture. And actually yesterday went to Kinko's, blew up some of my favorite pictures and put them in my room, by my bed, by my mirror, because I don't want to forget that beauty, and just looking at that can sometimes calm me down. So sight is also a sense that I think sometimes we don't necessarily think of affecting our stress levels, but it does. Imagery, pictures, candles, lighting, fill your spaces with something visual that's relaxing. A lot of times when I walk through cubicles in office spaces, I'll see these types of pictures on people's cubicles. And it's because that they are so relaxing and they resemble something so beautiful that even just taking a minute and getting lost in the picture can sometimes help us calm down.
Right. So the last one is take action. What are we going to do about all this now? You've learned a lot, you've heard a lot, or you've just been reminded. As we said, this is not new for most of us. But what are we willing to do? So today, just establish even one goal. With all the different things we said, body, mind, spirit, and then all the 5 senses, what is one tangible thing you could do even today to relax yourself, to manage your stress differently? Think about that. I suggest writing it down. Again, that's the professor in me, because we are much more likely, I can't remember by what percent, to do something if we write it down, but please do. And then list out all the things you have to do, need to do, or want to do. Now this takes more time, and when I'm in a perfectionist mode and my therapist and I discuss a list I promised to do, I often then I'm like, yeah, and let's make the next appointment 3 weeks from now, because I want all this time to write the list. And of course, when do I write the list? Somewhere within the last 36 hours before that next session. So it's kind of like, it's still good to have that goal of writing out lists. As we've talked about, it doesn't have to be journal lengths. It can be one words on a Post-it, or be more practical versus perfectionistic about what are the things, what are the lists. And I love lists. I love being able to have, I had 8 stickies the other day. I was like, oh my goodness. But then I could pick one up, ooh, good, everything on there is done in the garbage, and I got to throw like 6 of them away, and then just put like 1 or 2 things from the other 6 onto the 2 new stickies. But there's something tangible to that for me, so that's one of my self-cares and stress management, is having them and then walking through that. Set the priorities, as we already discussed. Have detailed short-term and daily goals, because that will help you. If you know by the time you're about to put your head on the pillow what you did do, that can help you sometimes mitigate all the stress you have of what you didn't do, because it helps you balance that out. Like, I couldn't do one more thing, and I'm not going to be able to do it tomorrow if I don't get sleep. Make time to have fun. That's so important. To think about what is it you like. Sometimes we get into such modes we don't even remember what we like. Don't take yourself as seriously, and laugh at something, or dance around a room, or do something you find fun. And most importantly, ask the Lord to give you wisdom and discernment to handle certain situations. Many of us are doing something we know we're called to do, but He does not call us to have these physiological symptoms. He doesn't cause us to end up in depression, or with an anxiety disorder, or with a heart attack, or with an ulcer, or other problems. Because of working for Him. What He calls us to do is asking for help from others, or wisdom and discernment. And then just really challenge yourself to say, what am I willing to do in the next week, the next month, and the next 3 months? Thank you all for your time. I hope that this was a lot of information that is able to be digested over the next week, the next month, and the next 90 days, as you kind of just remind yourself. And again, I think the best way to learn is to teach, so share this with someone else. You know, talk to somebody else about something you heard today or were reminded of, not in the way of, I heard something today you need to hear. Remember that what that sounds like to others, that'll stress them out, and then they'll be mad at you and stress you out. Instead, say, you know, something I learned today, or something I was reminded of, and found it helpful. What do you think? That's just a way to invite that up. But I'm going to invite Juliana up, just so that if anyone has questions, you can feel free to ask us. Questions, thoughts, suggestions, tips that one of you has that we didn't touch on?
It was really excellent, a lot of food for thought. This one slide I was curious, if under reflexology, touching major points of hands and feet, what points in the hand that I can learn to touch?
Now, I wish I could off the top of my head say what they are, but if you go online and you even type in reflexology in hands, they will show you, because I can't remember all the pressure points. I know one specifically is right here. Right as you're in your thumb joint. If any of you take this knuckle right now and push it right at that thumb joint, do you feel it? And if you're pushing it just right, like for me, I feel it in my throat. Anybody else, if you're taking that knuckle and you push it really hard into your thumb, feeling it somewhere else, like up your forearm? Not really for others? Little. But part of it is even just that paying attention, that there really are actual places that they've been able to look at from ancient Chinese medicine on reflexology in the feet and hands. Now they've actually been able to map it out from a chiropractic standpoint. So it's like it wasn't just voodoo science. There was actually a way with energies that was real. And so even looking it up, and you'll see charts that will show you where in your hands and feet to focus in on. Great question. Others? Questions, thoughts, or something you want to share and gift the rest of us with that you have found to be a nugget of stress management?
There's sometimes our stress end up in our dreaming experience, and
For sure.
if we analyze our dreams, we can have some idea where the stress is coming from.
That's true, and if you want extra help, Elizabeth is one of the experts on that, so you can then visit Elizabeth for a couple sessions for dream interpretation, because that is a very true place that some, like me, I don't really remember my dreams. My sister has these amazing, ever since she was a little kid, vivid dreams. She talks in her sleep, and so she's able to get a lot more out of that. That's where, for me, being more just cerebral, I have to get up because it's a list, literally. I get up and I write down that golden list, and I have had some of my best speeches because it was running around in my head. So it was still the stress, but rather than this dream I have to interpret, it's like, boom, okay, put it out in these 4 ways. And I get up and I write it down, I put on the nightlight, and then I wake up in the morning, it's like, wow, I'm so glad, and there's other times I don't. But you're right, whether it's through dreams or logic, it is important to capture that and say, why do I keep having this come up, or what does this possibly mean? It's a great one. Others, thoughts, suggestions, or comments, questions?
I appreciate that you talked about early on that a lot of times, because we're Christians, there was a mentality years ago that it would be inappropriate to get any outside help, because that just means it adds to that guilt and shame. It just means your faith isn't strong enough. You don't trust the Lord, and just all the church. The church has been so hard on this, and I've worked in a church, and now I work for a different ministry. But just do it yourself and power up with the Lord. And I really appreciate that you acknowledge that organically this is how it is for some people, and that just if you hurt something else, you go get some assistance for it. So, I thought that was really encouraging. So, thank you.
Thank you. And just as a further reminder, I always think of Jesus was discouraged when the disciples weren't with him. He was God in his perfection, and he was like, hello, why are you sleeping? Can't you be here with me? Like we weren't meant. And I always remind myself, Adam was in a perfect garden with God himself, and even God was like, dude, wow, I'm not enough. You need some company. Well, that's theology peanuts of Susie digested. But it was like, if that, even then in perfection, we needed company, why wouldn't we need company now? Why is it just me and God, and we've got it, when God way back then in perfection was like, I think you need somebody else. That's a great point. Anybody else? Any thought, question, or comment? Well, thank you all for your time. Please fill out the evaluation to let us know what to keep doing, stop doing, do more of or less of. We really do appreciate it, and thank you all so much for being present with us today.
Well, thank you to our speakers.
Yes.